Please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to His Holiness Candramauli Maharaj's daily online discourses. And today's class will be given by Her Grace Gopika Radhika Mataji. Hare Krishna Mataji. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances and my humble obeisances to all the devotees here. Prabhuji, may I share the screen if you?
Yes, if you come. Yes, Mataji.
So could you make me the co-host or just enable participant screen sharing?
Yes.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Okay, so today we'll be covering verses 3 to 5, verse 3 and then 4 and 5. Srimad Bhagavatam 1:11-3. Tamupashrutya ninadam jagad bhaya bhayavaham pratyudyayoh prajaha sarva bhartri darshana lalasaha. Translation: the citizens of Dwarka, having heard that sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run towards him fast, just to have a long-desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all devotees. Purport: as already explained, the citizens of Dwarka who lived at the time of Lord Krishna's presence there were all liberated souls who descended there along with the Lord as his entourage. All were very anxious to have an audience with the Lord, although because of spiritual contact, they were never separated from the Lord. Just as the gopis at Vrindavan used to think of Krishna while he was away from the village for cow-herding engagements, the citizens of Dwarka were all immersed in thought of the Lord while he was away from Dwarka to attend the battle of Kurukshetra. Some distinguished fiction writer in Bengal concluded that the Krishna of Vrindavan, that of Mathura, and that of Dwarka were different personalities. Historically, there is no truth in this conclusion. The Krishna of Kurukshetra and the Krishna of Dwarka are one and the same personality. The citizens of Dwarka were thus in a state of melancholy due to the Lord's absence from the transcendental city, as much as we are put in a state of melancholy at night because of the absence of the sun. The sound heralded by Lord Krishna was something like the heralding of the sunrise in the morning. So all the citizens of Dwarka awoke from a state of slumber because of the sunrise of Krishna, and they all hastened towards him just to have an audience. The devotees of the Lord know no one else as their protector. This sound of the Lord is identical with the Lord, as we have tried to explain by the non-dual position of the Lord. The material existence of our present status is full of fear. Out of the 4 problems of material existence, namely the food problem, the shelter problem, the fear problem, and the mating problem, the fear problem gives us more trouble than the others. We are always fearful due to our ignorance of the next problem. The whole material existence is full of problems, and thus the fear problem is always prominent. This is due to our association with the illusory energy of the Lord, known as Maya or external energy. Yet all fear is vanished as soon as there is the sound of the Lord, represented by his holy name, as it was sounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the following 16 words: Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. We can take advantage of these sounds and be free from all threatening problems of material existence. Then the next 2 verses, 4 and 5 combined. Tatropanita balayo raver deepa mivadritaha atma ramam purna kamam nijalabhena nityada prityut hulla mukhaha prochur harsha gadgadaya gira pitaram sarva suhridam evatara mivarbhakaha. Translation: the citizens arrived before the Lord with their respective presentations, offering them to the fully satisfied and self-sufficient one, who, by his own potency, incessantly supplies others. These presentations were like the offering of a lamp to the sun. Yet the citizens began to speak in ecstatic language to receive the Lord, just as birds welcome their guardian and father. Purport: The Supreme Lord Krishna is described herein as Atmaram. He is self-sufficient and there is no need for him to seek happiness from anything beyond himself. He is self-sufficient because his very transcendental existence is total bliss. He is eternally existent, he is all-cognizant and all-blissful. Therefore, any presentation, however valuable it may be, is not needed by him. But still, because he is the well-wisher for one and all, he accepts from everyone everything that is offered to him in pure devotional service. It is not that he is in want for such things, because the things are themselves generated from his energy. The comparison is made herein that making offerings to the Lord is something like offering a lamp in the worship of the sun god. Anything fiery and illuminating is but an emanation of the energy of the sun. And yet, to worship the sun god, it is necessary to offer him a lamp. In the worship of the sun, there is some sort of demand made by the worshipper. But in the case of devotional service to the Lord, there is no question of demand from either side. It is all a sign of pure love and affection between the Lord and the devotee. The Lord is the supreme father of all living beings, and therefore those who are conscious of this vital relation with God can make filial demands from the Father, and the Father is pleased to supply the demands of such obedient sons without bargaining. The Lord is just like the desire tree, and from him everyone can have everything by the causeless mercy of the Lord. As the Supreme Father, the Lord, however, does not supply to a pure devotee what is considered to be a barrier to the discharge of devotional service. Those who are engaged in the devotional service of the Lord can rise to the position of unalloyed devotional service by his transcendental attraction. So, repeating the translations once more, the citizens of Dwarka, having heard that sound which threatens fear personified in the material world, began to run towards him fast, just to have a long-desired audience with the Lord, who is the protector of all devotees. The citizens arrived before the Lord with their respective presentations, offering them to the fully satisfied and self-sufficient one, who, by his own potency, incessantly supplies others. These presentations were like the offering of a lamp to the sun. Yet the citizens began to speak in ecstatic language to receive the Lord, just as wards welcome their guardian and father. Om Gyantimirandhasya Gyananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschati Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll stop sharing this and switch to my slides. So I basically thought to discuss two main points today from this section of verses. The first is fear, the problem and the solution. And the second is, as Prabhupada writes here, making offerings to the Lord is something like offering a lamp in the worship of the sun god. So we'll be discussing these two verses, these three verses under these two titles. So as Prabhupada writes here, that out of the four problems of material existence, the fear problem is the most prominent one. And as we have this very famous verse from the Hitopadesh, Ahara Nidra Bhaya Maithunam Cha Samanya Metat Pashubhir Naranam. Eating, sleeping, sex, and defense, these four principles are common to both human beings and animals. So basically, these are the four main areas where living entities in this material world, whether they are animals or human beings, they have to struggle for their existence and make endeavors to fulfill these particular needs. So out of all these four, the defense part or the bhaya part, the fear part, is what Prabhupada says is the most prominent. And that is because it basically encompasses the problems of the other three areas as well. right? We are a living entity would be fearful whether or not he's going to get his next meal, or whether or not he's going to get a shelter. And as Prabhupada writes here, that there is always uncertainty, because we do not know what the next problem might be and when it might take place. So because of this uncertainty and unpredictability that is a characteristic of the material world, so fear is an emotion, a problem that is paramount, that is the most prominent in the existence of every living entity. As the Srimad Bhagavatam states, padam padam yad vipadam natesham, that in the material world at every step there is danger. We literally do not know what may happen the next second. And that puts us in this position of uncertainty and fear all the time. So it's a very prominent feature of our material existence. And the Bhagavatam gives us a very deep-rooted explanation of what is the original source of this fear. Because at a surface level, we can understand that, okay, my fear is arising from uncertainty regarding my shelter or my food or my job, my occupation, my financial situation, health-related concerns. So these are like the surface causes, at a surface level, the superficial causes of my fear. But they're deep-rooted, the original cause of fear, which gives rise to all these multiple manifestations of fear. The Bhagavatam states this in Srimad Bhagavatam 11:2-37. A very famous verse. I just quoted the first two lines of the verse. Bhayam dvitiya bhiniveshatah syad ishadapetasya viparyayo smritehe. And the translation of this part is that fear arises when a living entity misidentifies himself as the material body, because of absorption in the external illusory energy of the Lord. When the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, he also forgets his own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. This bewildering, fearful condition is affected by the potency for illusion called Maya. So this basically is getting to the root of the problem. So what is the original cause of fear? The original cause is forgetfulness of the Supreme Lord and forgetfulness of one's own constitutional position as a servant of the Lord. That is what sets the whole cycle going, where now I'm no longer identifying myself as a spirit soul and a servant of Krishna. So what am I? Then I'm this material body. And what is this material body? This material body is a highly vulnerable thing, which can be attacked at any moment by any sort of material calamity. And I have no control over them. I have no idea what's going to happen next. So I feel this extreme vulnerability all the time. Whereas the soul, by its constitutional nature, then it is invincible, it is indestructible, it is eternal. And the constitutional position of the soul is to be a servant of Krishna, which further elevates us to a position of eternal bliss. So it's not just eternity, but it's also eternal knowledge and eternal bliss. So that is our constitutional position. But because it's only that the forgetfulness of that state, our original state, that causes this fear, which manifests in all these various forms. It's like Prabhupada would say, a person who is the son or daughter of a very, very rich and wealthy and powerful father. And the father is so powerful that the child doesn't have to worry about anything, because the father is fully capable of protecting the child in all respects and taking care of every need of the child. So the only thing in such a situation, the only thing that can cause fear for the child is when the child forgets that I'm the son of so-and-so, I'm the daughter of so-and-so. When the child forgets that connection with his or her powerful father, only then the child is like an orphan, because he has forgotten that I'm actually belonging to such a powerful parent who can take care of everything that I need. And so then that means I'm an orphan. And then all the problems of that child begin. So that is basically our condition, because of that original state of turning away from Krishna and forgetting our relationship with Krishna. Then we misidentify with the vulnerable material body, the perishable material body. The soul is eternal, but now it is forced to inhabit this body, which is forced to die again and again. It's not in my nature to die, but I'm forced to die and take birth again and again. It's so incompatible with my original nature. And all of this causes the fear that we experience in the material world. And So Krishna, as here Prabhupada writes, that when the living entity thus turns away from the Supreme Lord, so the Supreme Lord Krishna, he is basically the source of all fearlessness. And we have some very beautiful verses in the Bhagavatam which emphasize this aspect of Krishna, where Krishna is described as someone who is feared by fear personified. So Krishna is someone who, from whom even fear itself is afraid of. So that is Krishna's position. Krishna, the one who is feared by fear personified. So these are just some verses where this particular aspect of Krishna is mentioned. One is Srimad Bhagavatam 1:1-14. Apannah sansritim ghoram yannama vivasho grinan tatah sadyo vimuchyeta yad bibheti swayam bhayam. So yad bibheti swayam bhayam. Bhaya or fear is himself afraid of Krishna. Translation: living beings who are entangled into complicated meshes of birth and death can be freed immediately by even unconsciously chanting the holy name of Krishna, which is feared by fear personified. So who could be more powerful, or who could afford fearlessness better than Krishna, who is feared even by fear himself? Another verse here, this is from the 10th canto, 13th chapter, verses 12 and 13. This is when Krishna and all his cowherd boyfriends are eating their lunch. And in the meantime, the cows start meandering and wandering away. And then Lord Brahma steals all the calves and the cowherd boys subsequently. So here it says, O Maharaj Parikshit, while the cowherd boys, who knew nothing within the core of their hearts but Krishna, were thus engaged in eating their lunch in the forest, the calves went far away, deep into the forest, being allured by green grass. When Krishna saw that his friends, the cowherd boys, were frightened, he, the fierce controller even of fear itself, said, just to mitigate their fear, my dear friends, do not stop eating. I shall bring your calves back to the spot by personally going after them myself. So yeah, here Krishna is described as the fierce controller even of fear itself. And this is another verse, very famous, from Kunti Devi's prayers to Krishna when he was about to leave for Dwarka. Gopya dade tvai krita gasidam tavad yate dashashru kalilanjana sambhramaksham vaktram niniya bhaya bhavanaya sthitasya sa mam vimohayati bhirapi yad bibheti. So these words here, bhirapi yad bibheti. My dear Krishna, Yashoda took up a rope to bind you when you committed an offense, and your perturbed eyes overflooded with tears, which washed the mascara from your eyes. And you were afraid, although fear personified is afraid of you. This sight is bewildering to me. So she is recalling the Damodar pastime and praising the glories of Krishna, who comes under the control of his devotees so much that although he's someone who is feared even by fear personified, but he comes under the control of his devotees' affection and becomes afraid, genuinely afraid of his devotee, Mother Yashoda, when she took up a rope to bind him. So yeah, here's another reference to that same aspect of Krishna, where fear, although fear personified, is afraid of you. And therefore, Krishna is the ultimate source of fearlessness, the only person whom we can truly take shelter of to achieve a complete, deep-rooted solution to our fears. Material temporary solutions, yes, they are necessary, and we need to do our duty to fulfill those material necessities in a dharmic way. And we do that to the extent that is possible, but we also understand that that is not the ultimate solution to our problems. And that is not what will give us that sense of security and sense of safety and freedom from fear that we are truly seeking. We make material arrangements in a dharmic way as a duty, as a part of our service to Krishna, but ultimately we depend upon Krishna for our safety, for our fearlessness, both in our physical material aspects and the ultimate spiritual aspect. These are some other verses where, yeah, just describing this aspect of Krishna. We saw Krishna is feared by fear personified. These are some other verses kind of in the same line. This is from Kapil Dev's teachings to his mother Devbhuti. He says, Mad bhayat vati vatoyam suryastapati mad bhayat varshati indro dahatyagnir mrityushcharati mad bhayat. It is because of my supremacy that the wind blows. Out of fear of me, the sun shines. Out of fear of me, and the Lord of the clouds, Indra, sends forth showers out of fear of me. fire burns out of fear of me, and death goes about taking its toll out of fear of me. So yeah, very glorious verses, just describing Krishna's superlative power, how he's the supreme, all-powerful controller, and basically everything that's revolving, everything that's happening is happening out of fear of Krishna. He is the all-powerful controller of everything. Some other verses, also in Kapil Shiksha, out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the wind blows. Out of fear of him, the sun shines. Out of fear of him, the rain pours forth showers. And out of fear of him, the host of heavenly bodies shed their luster. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the trees, creepers, herbs, and seasonal plants and flowers blossom and fructify, each in its own season. Out of fear of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the rivers flow and the ocean never overflows. Out of fear of him only does fire burn, and does the earth with its mountains not sink in the water of the universe. So that is Krishna, that is his power. And therefore, he is the only ultimate source of shelter and the source of all fearlessness for everyone struggling in this material world. And therefore, the fearfulness, the solution, as Prabhupada writes in today's purport as well, that the 16 words Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. That's our instant solution to achieving fearlessness, because Krishna and his name are non-different, and therefore one can instantly connect personally with the source of fearlessness by chanting his holy names. This is another place where Prabhupada mentions the same thing. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 795 purport. He says the necessities of the material world are four: ahar, nidra, bhaya, and methun. Eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. In this material world, everyone is in fearful consciousness, sada samudvigna dhyan. And the only means to make everyone fearless is Krishna consciousness. When Lord Nrsimhadev appeared, all the devotees became fearless. The devotees' hope of becoming fearless is to chant the holy name of Lord Nrsimhadev. Yato yato yami tato Nrsimha. Wherever we go, we must always think of Lord Nrsimhadev. Thus, there will be no fear for the devotee of the Lord. So, of course, Nrsimhadev is specifically a form of the Lord that devotees approach to take shelter of when in a fearful situation, because he protected Prahlad Maharaj from the greatest demon at that time, Hiranyakashipu. And that form of the Lord is specifically, it awards fearlessness and protection to devotees. And so, and of course, then the thing is, it's not just about rescuing us from fear, from material dangers, but also fear from the ultimate source of all misfortune and misery, which is the cycle of repeated birth and death. And the Bhagavad Gita mentions that in this famous verse, Bhagavad Gita, sorry, it's not Srimad Bhagavatam, it's Bhagavad Gita 240. Neha bhikramanashosti pratyavayo na vidyate swalpamapyasya dharmasya trayate mahato bhayat. In this endeavor, it's referring to devotional service to Krishna. In this endeavor, there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. So here, the most dangerous type of fear is indicating the fear of repeated birth and death, because that is the source of all other dangers and fears. Just like Kunti Devi says, right, that may all these calamities come to me again and again, because when they come to us, we remember, when these calamities come, we remember Krishna. And by remembering Krishna again and again, I will no longer have to see repeated birth and death, which is the source of all those calamities in the first place. So this is getting to the root cause. So even a little advancement in devotional service protects one from the most dangerous type of fear, which is basically the source of all other fears, which is the cycle of birth and death. Another verse, and this is towards the end of the Gita, Krishna reassures Arjun, Sarva Dharman Parityajya, Mamekam Sharanam Praja, Aham Tvam Sarva Papebhyo Mokshayishyami Ma Shuja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Again, those famous words, do not fear, Ma Shuja. All one has to do is to depend upon Krishna and take shelter of him unreservedly, and Krishna himself assures, do not fear. Say in the same way, he, and even more than that, actually, earlier on in the Gita, he asks Arjun to declare this, right? Konteya pratijanehi na me bhakta pranashyati. That Arjun, you declare that my devotee will never perish. Because Krishna, his words are subject to change, depending on the situation, depending on his devotee's needs. But when his devotee declares something, then Krishna upholds the devotee's words at all costs. So yeah, he asks Arjun to declare boldly to the whole world that my devotee will never perish. Krishna's devotees are assured all protection by Krishna in this life and beyond. And of course, our Shastras are filled with countless examples and pastimes of devotees being protected in all sorts of different ways by Krishna and his various incarnations. We have this is just a very short representative list, and I would request all of you also to please add whatever pastimes come to your mind or whatever examples of personalities come to your mind in this regard, examples of Krishna's protection being given to devotees. So we have Queen Kunti and the Pandavas, for instance. Krishna saved them like numerous times at every step of their lives. There's Draupadi, very famous Maharaj Ambarish. He gets cursed by Durvasa Muni, who sends that demon to attack him, and Krishna and Maharaj Ambarish, he makes absolutely no attempt to defend himself, but Krishna sends a Sudarshan disc immediately and that Sudarshan disc pursues Durvasa Muni all through the 3 worlds, and no one is able to rescue him until Durvasa Muni is compelled to come back and take shelter and beg forgiveness from Maharaj Ambarish. And Prahlad Maharaj, of course, his father left no stone unturned to kill him, and he was just a 5-year-old boy. And there is Hiranyakashipu, who has achieved every boon possible from Brahma to ensure his invincibility, and yet he could not do anything to Prahlad Maharaj. There's Uttara and Parikshit Maharaj. Ashwatthama sends his Brahmastra to Parikshit Maharaj, and Krishna is just about to leave for Dwarka at that time, and Uttara comes running to him, and Krishna saves both of them. We have the princesses captured by Bhaumasura. This was mentioned just a few verses back in this section of Bhagavatam that we are currently studying, how the 16,100 princesses were captured by Bhaumasura. And even though they were regarded as not so ideal in the eyes of normal society, because they had been captured and kept in captivity by another man. But Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because of their sincere prayers, he rescues them and accepts all of them as his own queens. He becomes the husband of all of those princesses. Then we have the kings imprisoned by Jarasandha. That also comes up in the Bhagavatam. Jarasandha had captured many kings. He had defeated them in battle, and he was keeping them imprisoned, and the plan was to make a human sacrifice of all those kings ultimately. And those kings had been praying to Krishna in their hearts for a very long time, and then ultimately Krishna arranges for Jarasandha to be killed by the hands of Bhimsen and rescues all those kings. Demigods headed by Indra, of course, the Bhagavatam is filled with instances of the demigods approaching Krishna, Lord Vishnu, again and again. When they're attacked by demons, they run into different sorts of troubles. And each time Krishna, either personally, Vishnu personally, or through one of his forms or incarnations, he helps the demigods. He helps them regain their heavenly kingdom. He helps them in their universal administrative duties. He helps them conquer the demons. Numerous instances, the Bhagavatam is full of them. We have Ajamil, initially a pious, saintly Brahmin, but then he gets tempted and gets degraded by the association of a prostitute, and then spends most of his life in this degraded manner. But Krishna did not forget him, and he arranged for Ajamil to name his son Narayan, and that becomes the saving grace at the very last moment of his death. And he gets rescued from the Yamadutas and gets perfection and ends up going back to Godhead in that same lifetime. So yeah, as the Gita says, Neha Bhikramanashosti, there is no loss or diminution. Even a little bit of devotional service can become one's saving grace from the ultimate kind of fear. Gajendra, he is an elephant. He is not even a human being. He's just an animal. He's an elevated soul, but currently in this pastime, he was currently in the body of an elephant, and he prays to Krishna, and Krishna comes and rescues him, both from the attack of the crocodile and also from the curse due to which he was in an elephant body. So both the things, yeah. Prishadra, this is an example which appears in the 9th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. And I thought to discuss this particular example in detail. because this is a story which I've personally found always very fascinating and interesting, and it's also relatively little known. So yeah, I just thought to bring it out in today's discussion. So basically, this is, we find mention of this in Srimad Bhagavatam 9:3-14. So Prishadra is one of the sons of Shraddha Dev. He is one of the Manus. And the eldest son of Shraddha Dev is Ikshvaku. We find that in the Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna is mentioning the parampara of the Gita. He says, Imam Vivasvate Yogam Proktavanaham Avyayam Vivasvan Manave Praha Manor Ikshvakave Bravi. So he imparted this knowledge in the past to the sun god. Krishna imparted this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to the sun god, Vivaswan. And then he imparted it to his son, Shraddha Dev. He was playing the role of Manu in that particular Manvantar. And Shraddha Dev imparted it to Ikshvaku. So Prishadra was one of the younger brothers of Ikshvaku. Ikshvaku was the oldest son of Shraddha Dev. So this particular personality, Prishadra, it says here, among these sons, Prishadra, following the order of his spiritual master, was engaged as a protector of cows. He would stand all night with a sword to give the cows protection. Once at night, while it was raining, a tiger entered the land of the cowshed. Upon seeing the tiger, all the cows who were lying down got up in fear and scattered here and there on the land. When the very strong tiger seized a cow, the cow screamed in distress and fear. And Prishadra, hearing the screaming, immediately followed the sound. He took up his sword, but because the stars were covered by clouds, he mistook the cow for the tiger and mistakenly cut off the cow's head with great force. So this was a really unfortunate thing that happened. He used to stand guard to protect the cows, but here the cow gets attacked by a tiger and he accidentally ends up killing the cow instead of the tiger. And because the tiger's ear had been cut by the edge of the sword, the tiger was very afraid and it fled from that place while bleeding on the street. In the morning, when Prishadra, who was quite able to subdue his enemy, saw that he had killed the cow, although at night he thought he had killed the tiger, he was very unhappy because, yes, of course, killing a cow is regarded as one of the most heinous sins that one can commit. As per our Vedic system, cows are extremely dear to Krishna, and killing them or harming them in any way is considered, even accidentally, is considered to be a very, very grave sin. So he was very unhappy to find out that he had killed a cow. So although Prishadra, but of course, yeah, he had committed the sin unknowingly. So although Prishadra had committed the sin unknowingly, his family priest, Vasishtha, cursed him, saying, in your next life, you shall not be able to become a Kshatriya. Instead, you shall take birth as a Shudra because of killing the cow. So pretty grave curse, pretty grave reaction for a mistake that was just a complete accident. He had no intention to do so. He was, in fact, endeavoring his best to protect the cows, but this ends up happening, a human error, and he gets cursed by his own guru, his family priest, to take his next birth as a Shudra. For a son of Manu himself, it's a pretty grave curse, pretty grave reaction that he incurred. But then what happens is, it's very interesting, that when the hero Prishadra was thus cursed by his spiritual master, he accepted the curse with folded hands. Then, having controlled his senses, he took the vow of brahmacharya, which is approved by all great sages. Thereafter, Prishadra gained relief from all responsibilities, became peaceful in mind, and established control over all his senses. Being unaffected by material conditions, being pleased with whatever was available by the grace of the Lord to maintain body and soul together, and being equal toward everyone, he gave full attention to the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vasudeva, who is the transcendental supersoul free from material contamination. Thus, Prishadra, fully satisfied in pure knowledge, always keeping his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, achieved pure devotional service to the Lord and began traveling all over the world without affection for material activities, as if he were deaf, dumb, and blind. So basically what he did was that he accepted the curse with folded hands and dedicated himself fully, 100% to Lord Krishna's devotional service, to his remembrance, becoming completely absorbed in him. Just like we see Parikshit Maharaj, right? He gets cursed by the Brahmin boy, and immediately he relinquishes all responsibilities and comes to the Ganga, and with one pointed attention, he just absorbs himself in hearing and chanting about Krishna. So in the same way, Prishadra, yeah, he gets cursed, so he accepts the curse humbly and dedicates himself 100% to Krishna's service. And the result is that, it says here, with this attitude, Prishadra became a great saint. And when he entered the forest and saw a blazing forest fire, he took this opportunity to burn his body in the fire. Thus he achieved the transcendental spiritual world. So, yeah, Prabhupada explains the implications of this. Prishadra, because of his karma, was cursed to take his next birth as a Shudra. But because he took to saintly life, specifically concentrating his mind always upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he became a pure devotee. Immediately after giving up his body in the fire, he reached the spiritual world, as mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, Mam 80, as a result of his devotional situation. Devotional service performed by thinking of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is so powerful that although Prishadra was cursed, he avoided the terrible consequence of becoming a Shudra and instead returned home back to Godhead. So basically, that entire curse was bypassed completely. The curse was supposed to manifest in his next life, right? But that next life never happened, because in that very life, he achieved perfection and went back to Godhead. So the Guru had cursed him to take birth as a Shudra in his next birth, but he never took a next birth. So that curse never got the opportunity to manifest. And that very same life, his devotional service to Krishna enabled him to reach spiritual perfection and go back to the spiritual world. And as Prabhupada says, so he avoided the terrible consequence of becoming a Shudra and instead returned home back to Godhead. So yeah, again, echoing Bhagavad Gita 240, even a little endeavor on this path saves one from the greatest type of fear or danger. Things that are destined to happen, things that are absolutely meant to happen, there is no way of avoiding those dangers. Even they get bypassed completely by devotional service, and they never end up happening in the first place. So these are just some thoughts about fear in the material world and the problem and the solution, which is taking shelter of Krishna. And the next point, and our last point today that we'll discuss, is about making offerings to the Lord is something like offering a lamp in the worship of the sun god. So yeah, the sun god, the sun is the source of illumination, all illumination in this world. And what is a tiny lamp in front of the sun? The light of the lamp, it's absolutely minuscule compared to the illumination of the sun. But we offer, in worshiping the sun, we offer a lamp to the sun and it is accepted by the sun god. And similarly, in the Shastras, the example is given of offering a palm full of Ganges water to the Ganges, right? Ganges is worshipped by offering the same water back to her. So similarly, that is how we worship Krishna, because he is the creator of everything in existence. So all we are doing is offering our attitude of love and affection in whatever we do to Krishna. Everything else, we are just taking his own things and offering them back to him. And that is why, as Krishna says in the Gita, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yomi Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Paritam Ashnami Prayadatmana. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I'll accept it. That is how simple devotional service is. Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the process is so easy that even a leaf or a little water or fruit can be offered to the Supreme Lord in genuine love, and the Lord will be pleased to accept it. No one, therefore, can be barred from Krishna consciousness because it is so easy and universal. Krishna accepts even a little flower from his pure devotee. He is not in need of anything from anyone because he is self-sufficient, yet he accepts the offering of his devotee in an exchange of love and affection. So that is basically the only thing that is mattering over here. And bhakti is mentioned twice in this verse, which is in order to declare more emphatically that bhakti or devotional service is the only means to approach Krishna. So yeah, this is something significant because Sanskrit shlokas are usually so succinct, so concise in their meaning that there is no redundancy. Like we will never find words that are being repeated unnecessarily. So the fact that the word bhakti is mentioned twice in just one single verse indicates just how much this aspect is emphasized in this particular verse. And Prabhupada goes on to say no other conditions, such as becoming a Brahmin, a learned scholar, a very rich man, or a great philosopher, can induce Krishna to accept some offering. Without the basic principle of bhakti, nothing can induce the Lord to agree to accept anything from anyone. And just thought to run through the verses of Krishna's dealings with the Sudama Brahmin in this context, because these verses are really beautiful. This is reading from Canto 10, chapter 81. Translation: while the Supreme Lord, the goal of all saintly persons, conversed in this way with the best of the twice born, He laughed and spoke the following words to that dear friend of his, the Brahman Sudama, all the while smiling and looking upon him with affection. Purport: since Lord Krishna knows the minds of everyone, he could tell at once that his friend Sudama had brought some flat rice for him and was ashamed to present it. According to Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti's further explanation of this verse, Lord Krishna smiled at this moment, thinking, yes, I'm going to make you show what you have brought for me. His smile then turned to laughter as he thought, how long are you going to keep this precious gift hidden in your cloth? So yeah, Sudama Brahman is feeling so ashamed to present his little bundle of flattened rice to Krishna, thinking he's Dwarkadhish, how can I present such a very meager, humble offering to him? And Krishna is saying, how long are you going to keep this precious gift hidden in your cloth? And the Supreme Lord said, "O Brahman, what gift have you brought me from home? I regard as great even the smallest gift offered by my pure devotees in pure love. But even great offerings presented by non-devotees do not please me." And then very interestingly enough, Krishna says this particular verse, which is the same one in the Bhagavad Gita that we saw just now, Patram Pushpam Phalam Toyam Yome Bhaktya Prayachati Tadaham Bhakti Paritam Ashnami Prayatatmanaha. If one offers me with love and devotion a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. This is Srimad Bhagavatam 10:81-4. So this verse not only appears in Bhagavad Gita 9:26, but we have the exact same verse spoken by Krishna in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:81-4 as well. And in the purport, it's mentioned, Krishna says, something may or may not be impressive and pleasing in its own right, but when my devotee offers it to me in devotion, with the expectation that I will enjoy it, it gives me great pleasure. In this regard, I make no discrimination. The word ashnami, I eat, implies that Lord Krishna eats even a flower, which is supposed to be smelled, bewildered as he is by the ecstatic love that he feels for his devotee. So yeah, this is another interesting point, because Krishna says, if one offers me a leaf, a flower, a fruit, or water, I will accept it. And the Sanskrit word is ashnami, which means I will eat it. And so yeah, our acharyas point out, a flower is not eaten, right? It is smelled. But Krishna says eat, and because he ends up eating even the flowers, because he gets so overwhelmed and bewildered by the ecstatic love that he feels for his devotee. And Shukdev Goswami continued, even after being addressed in this way, O king, the Brahmin felt too embarrassed to offer his palmfuls of flat rice to the husband of the goddess of fortune. He simply kept his head bowed in shame. Being the direct witness in the hearts of all living beings, Lord Krishna fully understood why Sudama had come to see him. Thus he thought, in the past, my friend has never worshipped me out of a desire for material opulence, but now he comes to me to satisfy his chaste and devoted wife. I'll give him riches that even the immortal demigods cannot obtain. Thinking like this, the Lord snatched from the Brahman's garment the grains of flat rice tied up in an old piece of cloth and exclaimed, "What is this? My friend, have you brought this for me? It gives me great pleasure. Indeed, these few grains of flat rice will satisfy not only me, but also the entire universe." After saying this, the Supreme Lord ate one palmful and was about to eat a second when the devoted goddess Rukmini took hold of his hand. And so the reason for this is elaborated in the purport, where it is stated, Queen Rukmini took hold of Krishna's hand to prevent him from eating any more of the flat rice. According to Sripad Sridhar Swami, with this gesture, she meant to tell the Lord, this much of your grace is sufficient to assure anyone vast riches, which are merely the play of my glance. But please do not force me to surrender myself to this Brahman, as will happen if you eat one more handful, because Krishna will feel so indebted and so grateful that Lakshmi Devi will end up being forced to surrender herself to this Brahman. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur explains that by taking hold of the Lord's hand, Rukmini implied, if you eat all of this wonderful treat your friend brought from his home, what will I have left for my friends, co-wives, servants, and myself? There will not be enough left to distribute even one grain to each of us. That's Lakshmi Devi herself saying. And to her maid-servant companions, she said by her gesture, this hard rice will upset my Lord's tender stomach. So with that excuse, she prevents Krishna from eating anymore. So yeah, these are Krishna's amazing, sweet, compassionate dealings with his devotees, which are so heart-touching and it it gives so much encouragement, and they are so moving basically to know that the all-powerful Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the creator of everything, the control of everything, and who doesn't need anything basically from anyone, he acknowledges and appreciates even the tiniest service that we are able to perform for him, and he reciprocates with us in a manner which no one else can be expected to. So yeah, Krishna is not only the supreme source of fearlessness, but also the supreme source of love and satisfaction in terms of a relationship that we can expect from anyone. The best source is Krishna. And another instance, this is from Bhagavatam 1:11:36 purport. This is referring to Krishna's queens. That Cupid, however, was himself captivated by the grave and exciting dealings of the goddess of fortune, and he voluntarily gave up his bow and arrows in a spirit of frustration. Such was the beauty and attraction of the queens of Lord Krishna. So firstly, it is describing the exceptional beauty and attraction of Lord Krishna's queens, but then it goes on to say, yet they could not disturb the transcendental senses of the Lord. This is because the Lord is all perfect and thus Atmaram, or self-sufficient. Yeah, the same word Atmaram is used in today's verse as well. That Krishna is self-sufficient, he's Atmaram. He does not require anyone's extraneous help for his personal satisfaction. Therefore, the queens could not satisfy the Lord by their feminine attractiveness, but they satisfied him by their sincere affection and service. So it was not their beauty or attractiveness that attracted Krishna, it was their sincere affection and service. Only by unalloyed transcendental loving service could they satisfy the Lord, and the Lord was pleased to treat them as wives in reciprocation. And so, yeah, to conclude with, I thought to share this particular quote, very beautiful quote from Srila Prabhupada. This is during Sri Sri Rukmini Dwarkanath deity installation, July 16, 1969, Los Angeles. And I actually wanted to play the audio. So let me play it and hopefully it should be audible. Would you please let me know, Prabhuji, if it's audible?
Yes, Mataji.
Okay, so I'll play it at this point.
Krishna,
Yes, it's audible.
He was talking with Sanatana Goswami. Madan Mohan, Sanatana Goswami at that time had no temple. He was hanging his deity on the tree. So Madan Mohan was talking, he saying, Sanatana, you are bringing all these dry chapatis and it is stale, and you don't give me even little salt. How can I eat? Sanatana Goswami says, sir, where shall I go? Whatever I get, I offer you. You kindly accept. I cannot move, old man. So Krishna had to eat there. Because the bhakta is offering, he cannot refuse. Jiman bhaktya prajit. The real thing is bhakti. What you can offer to Krishna, everything belongs to Krishna. What you have got, what is your value? And what is the value of your things? There is nothing. Therefore, the real thing is bhaktya. Real thing is your feeling. Krishna, kindly tell it. I have no qualification. I am most rotten fallen. But I have brought this thing for you. Please take. This will be accepted. Don't be perfect. Always be careful. You are dealing with Krishna. That is my request. Thank you very much.
Yeah, with these words of Srila Prabhupada, I would like to conclude, and over to you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Thank you for a very wonderful, elaborate classes with a lot of references to other statements, making and emphasizing the points on fear and our qualifications for offering and how Krishna accepts things with love. So, dear devotees, I will first of all encourage you to all switch on your cameras if you can to make this session more interactive, personal. And if you have any questions, comments, realizations, please feel free to share. Please, you can post your questions in the chat as well. I'll be more than happy to read it for you if you are in a position where you cannot speak. Thank you. So Mataji, I have sorry, there's something in the chat. Sorry, so apologies for that. So there's I wanted to share just wanted to re-emphasize, ask a question. You mentioned that the root fear has many manifestations that we see. You were mentioning losing of a job or something else, or illness and things like that. But the root cause is our identification with matter and body and the anxiety that comes out of this. So can you please elaborate that, because it's quite wonderful, that statement by Prabhupada, the purpose.
Okay.
Thank you.
I guess basically the point that Prabhupada is making there is in terms of our identity, right? That whatever I think I am, basically this is kind of we find the same thing mentioned in the study of psychology also, that all of our processes like emotion or motivation or self-efficacy, all these stem initially from our self-concept. Whatever we think of ourselves, from that forms the basis of our emotions or our motivation of our personality or our dealings with others. So the same thing applies here, that first of all, what do I think I am? And if I think that I am this body and this material world is the only reality, then yes, I'm in a very, very vulnerable position. Because this body, there is no doubt it is perishable, it is very vulnerable, and this material world, there is no doubt it's a very precarious place. And I don't have anything higher to seek shelter of, because this is the only reality that I'm considering, a very precarious, uncertain material world and a very vulnerable and temporary body. So naturally, it puts us in a state of great fear, which is what is the case with those who have no concept of God. And therefore, and of course, like, it's not that as devotees, we do have this understanding, at least a theoretical understanding, but still we do experience fear. At least speaking for myself, I do experience fear due to material causes. But yes, at least we have this higher understanding to give us some solace, to take shelter of to some degree, that yes, there is Krishna to look after us. There is Krishna whom I can take shelter of. And I am not this perishable body. I am someone higher than that. I am a spirit soul who can ultimately, at the end of the day, I cannot be harmed by whatever material calamities happen to me. So yeah, at least even a theoretical level, this knowledge, this philosophical understanding acts as a source of solace. And then it prompts us to pray to Krishna and to take shelter of him. And that brings even more tangible fearlessness due to Krishna's reciprocation. So both the philosophical understanding and the active reciprocation of Krishna, both of these contribute to that feeling of fearlessness.
Thank you, Mataji. I think, yes, thank you.
I would love to hear from you and other devotees also, if you would all like to share some of your realizations about overcoming fear due to Krishna's shelter, or anything that you have in this, thoughts you have in this regard. Because there's something which we all deal with in this material world. It's a fearful place, very unpredictable place. And
yes, Mataji. So devotees, I think it's a very wonderful point to share. Any realizations on that topic? That would be wonderful for discussions.
Just in terms of how Krishna consciousness helps you deal with fear or anxiety or uncertainty.
Yes, so whilst the devotees think I can cite my example, I'm fearful. So I do, because for me personally, I also feel that the fear extends towards your family as well, not what's happening to you, because For example, being very honest, what's going to happen to your children, what's going to happen to the children's future? Are they studying? They should be getting good marks. What's their future looks like, health. So many things, right? But then at the end, Prabhupada keeps on hammering the point, right? That you're trying to find happiness in this world, right? Mental happiness, physical happiness. But this place is not a place for gentlemen. So no matter, whatever you find is only going to be temporary. So miseries would be temporary as well. And you just have to tolerate it. And, these things about titiksha, tolerance is so, that's what keeps me going, tolerate it. Whatever comes in. But myself, my mind goes to all directions, expansions of the body, family, all those things. And then fear is also then seeing what will happen to those individuals as well. But I think for me, keeping constant reminders of the words for Prabhupads, for great devotees, our gurus, Shiksha and Diksha gurus, that constant awareness keeps us grounded, or at least for the time being free from anxiety.
Yeah.
That would my comment, Mataji.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, what you said reminded me of that story, right, where it said that someone wanted a coat placed. I don't remember the exact story. It's a historical story of someone who wanted a coat that would provide instruction in times of happiness as well as times of distress. And the quote that was selected was, "This too shall pass." So in times of distress, it will give inspiration that, yeah, this too shall pass. These tough times will pass. And in times of happiness, this acts as a sobering thought that, yeah, these happy times will also pass. So I need to be dependent on the Lord and not become arrogant or start taking things for granted. So yeah, and the point you mentioned about, yeah, these things are also temporary. So even the miseries are temporary. Yeah, it's very helpful, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mataji. Anyone else? Any comments, realizations, questions? So if there's no question, Mataji, I would like to thank you for your time and this wonderful session. So Vansha kalpatarubhyascha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. His Holiness Chandramauli Maharaj ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
Grace Gopika Radhika Mataji ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Samvita Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Thank you so much, everyone.